10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 193. Hey everybody, welcome back into yet another episode of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. This is episode 193. We are quickly closing in on 200 episodes. I cannot believe it. And I got to thank you guys for sticking with me for this long. Checking out the show each and every week means the world to me. Hopefully you're getting a lot out of it. So this week's episode is going to require a lot of reading. It's actually based around reading. This is going to be reading part 3. So remember, you can get the PDF of all of these exercises that I'm giving you on the episode and support the show for years to come by going to our Patreon site. And you can find that by going to 10minutejazzlesson.com, clicking on one of the Patreon banners, and showing your support for the show in the form of a $3 monthly donation. And that gets you access to every single PDF that we've ever put out for all 193 episodes. And that's a pretty good deal. You get 193 PDFs for only $3 a month, and you make sure that this show keeps coming out in high quality week after week for you to help you along your jazz journey. We've had a huge influx of people this week, and I've got to give some shout outs to everybody out there. So thank you to Christoph, Raymonds, Maya, Liz, Hedgehog, Craig, Randy, and Simone. Thank you guys so much for joining up, showing your support, and we are a listener-supported show. So you are the reason that we stay in business, and we do really appreciate that. So remember, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, get signed up, get instant access to all of your PDFs today. All right, let's jump into today's episode. Okay, so as I mentioned, we are going to continue our series on reading. And this is one of the most important things, as we've discussed. You have to be a good reader. Contrary to popular belief, you must be able to read music and do a good job with it in order to be a complete and well-rounded jazz musician. So we're going to continue that today. So we've done episodes on reading really tough key signatures. That was episode 191. Then last week we did episode on different subdivisions of the beat. Now, this week, we're going to talk about syncopation. One of the most important aspects of playing jazz is syncopated rhythm. Jazz is built on top of syncopation, so if you can't read and be able to hear notes that are off the beat, you're not going to do very well when it comes to playing jazz, especially improvising, because these syncopations sort of have to be like built into our DNA as jazz musicians in order to sound like we know what we're doing. And that's a really important point, right? If you listen back through the history of jazz, even from the very beginning, these syncopated rhythms are really where it's at. And I'm sure that you've studied syncopation a little bit. Even if you didn't know it, when you're listening to jazz, you're studying syncopation because you're hearing all of your favorite musicians use syncopation in very cool ways. So I want you to be able to read syncopations. That's what this is all about. This can be where reading gets really, really difficult because you're not sure whether a note is on the beat, off the beat, what beat it is either on or off. So we're going to do a short study. And what this study does is it kind of combines last week and this week. We are going to be doing different subdivisions of notes, both on and off the beat, but mostly off the beat, as that is what the definition of syncopation is. So if you want to look at your PDF, I'm going to go right through it and show you kind of the different ways we're going to go about this. So as an overview first, if you look at the PDF, we've got 4 lines of material. The first line deals exclusively with eighth notes, some quarter notes, some half notes, but really we're dealing with the eighth note subdivision. The second line, we're dealing with some triplet subdivisions, right? The third line, we're dealing with more difficult triplet subdivisions. That's where we're going to start to use every part of the triplet on its own and together with other parts of the triplet. And then the fourth line is based off of 16th notes. So I want to focus in on the third line for a second, because what you're going to notice is that we are actually using the middle note of a triplet on its own. And that's something unique that we haven't really done yet on this show. And I wanted to kind of talk about that before we jump into it. So the first thing I want to talk about is how I'm going to practice this. Now, there are two ways to practice this. You can either use a metronome, which is obviously something that you should all have either on your smartphone or, a standalone metronome. That's a fine way to work on it. But today I'm going to work on it with the Drum Genius app. And the reason I want to work on it with the Drum Genius app is I would like you to do this sheet of exercises using even eighth notes. So I'm going to use a bossa nova feel to actually play through this entire sheet. And the reason for that is it's much harder to do this syncopation using swing eighth notes. So as you first get started and you're working on some of these really, really difficult syncopated rhythms, I want you to use a straight eighth note feel because I think it's going to give you more success right off the bat. So there's an exercise that I would like to do with you before we jump into the actual exercises on the sheet, and that is identifying where that middle triplet note is so that we can read line 3 without an issue. So if you notice, measure 9 of your PDF on beat 2, I'm using the middle note of the triplet independently of any other parts of the triplet. There's rests on the other 2 notes of the triplet. I'm just playing the middle one. So I want to go over this with you first. So I'm going to put on this bossa nova beat using the Drum Genius app, and I'm going to play one triplet followed by a beat of only the middle of the triplet so that you can hear what this particular rhythm sounds like. And I feel like if you can hear this, you're going to do fine on line 3, but I want to demonstrate it first. So this is one triplet, then one beat of just the middle part of the triplet, then one triplet, then one beat of just the middle part of the triplet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first count myself in using a triplet subdivision so that I'm hearing it in my head before I go to it. So here we go. 1, 2, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. So can you hear how I hit that second beat just on the second part of the triplet? Let's do it one more time. And this is measure 9. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. So once you get the idea of that, the feel of that down, this sheet is going to become a lot easier for you. Now, here's a few other suggestions on kind of how to play this sheet. If it's intimidating to you and you're having trouble with this, just treat each line as a different exercise. You do not have to play through the entire thing. That's not necessary right now. Eventually, you'll get to be able to play through the entire thing. Don't worry about that right now. Treat it as 4 separate exercises because they are all very different. I'm asking you to do very different things when it comes to each line. The second thing would be the articulations that I've written into the sheet are really important. Make sure that you're following those marcato markings, and I have a few legato markings as well. That's just going to get you to be doing it in the correct style, and I think that that's really important when it comes to this because we don't want to work on a bunch of syncopation stuff but be playing it in completely the wrong style. So make sure you follow those articulation markings. Now, my third thing is the fourth line, measure 13 through the end of the exercise. That is really, really difficult. That is where I'm using the 16th note subdivisions, okay? So you're going to probably have to spend a lot longer on that last line, and you might have to come back to the show and listen to me demonstrate it a number of times before you start getting it. But I want you to really stick with it, and don't get discouraged if that fourth line is like nearly impossible for you right now. I want you to keep working on it until you have it down. Okay, so now I'm going to demonstrate this for you, and I'm going to do it the way that I just suggested. So I'm going to put on Drum Genius, and I am going to play each line with a pause in between. and I'm always going to count myself into the next line so that I know exactly when it starts, where it starts, and when I'm getting going on this. So this is the full exercise with a little bit of a pause in between all of them, and you're going to hear me count myself into each one. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can hear that fourth line sounds pretty hectic, right? It goes by really fast. The subdivision is crazy. So if you need to slow that down a lot, just go for it. Just slow it down as much as you need to. But I really like playing this with the Drum Genius app. I think it gives me a great, a real feel as opposed to playing it with a metronome. And it just helps me out a lot. And it's just more fun to actually play it with that. Now, lines 3 and lines 4, you could hear that might sound very foreign to you, but that's okay. Stick with it until you can get it. Now, you'll notice that I've done this all on one note. I've just done it all on C. If you want to get adventurous with this, rewrite the exercise using different notes. Try to make a melody out of these rhythms. Even though they're really difficult and seemingly random, try to write a melody that makes sense using different notes with these same syncopated rhythms. That would be a great exercise for you. Now, this is also just a really, really small sample of syncopated rhythms. So what I suggest is that you write your own exercises like this. Just take syncopation as a concept and come up with 20 more of these little 4-bar exercises. Another fantastic tool that all the drummers know about that helps them with syncopation more than anything else is there's a book called Syncopation by Ted Reed. And this just contains hundreds of these syncopated exercises using several different concepts. And, it's meant for a drummer, so it's all on one note, but you can take it and you can start writing your own melodies. I've even used that book as inspiration for tunes before. So that's a fantastic resource, Syncopation by Ted Reed. That might be something you want to get your hands on if you're interested in practicing more of this. But this PDF, it should get you started, right? You might spend a week on just the first line if this is something you have trouble with, but hopefully eventually you're going to start working on, the other lines and maybe start writing your own stuff. This is one of the harder episodes that I've put out in recent memory, so don't feel bad if this gives you a lot of trouble. Okay, hopefully this all made sense. If you've got any questions for me on the episode, leave them in the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Community Facebook group. That's a great place to get in touch with me, and I'm sure you'll also get comments from a lot of the other members over there. So let me know. Was this too hard? Did I go too far with this particular one? Is this going to help you? Let me know over there. All right, everybody, get to work on this stuff. We'll see you next week with the tune of the month based off of reading. That one's going to be a doozy as well. And we hope you have a great weekend. Thanks, everybody. If you would like to get the PDF, go over to 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, get yourself signed up today, and you get instant access to all that stuff. Have a great weekend. Talk to you soon. Bye.